emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome.
Hello, I'm Chris. This is my build for eModels, continuing the real grade MS-06F Zaku 2 Principality of Xeon mass productive mobile suit. Now, the suit itself, I've done. It's finished. A couple of other little update bits from the end of the last video. Changed the hands over because I wanted to be holding a gun, so I had to redo the hands. And apparently they've got different outside bits as well, as opposed to the previous version of the hands that were just the clenched fists. So I've got one, say, ready to hold the gun, and one, I'll put another light on, you'll be able to see a little bit better, and one ready to sort of support it or do whatever I need to do with that. So that's the suit, as I say, completed, even more completed than it was last time. And this time, this video is going to be about the weathering of the suit. This is the main bit, but also the weapons. So weapons and weathering is this edition. I've already nipped ahead and cut off the last few bits from the sprue, which were the weapons. So I've cut them, I've primed them and painted them in the two colours that we have to do it in, the dark and the light steel, which show up a little bit. You can see the contrast, for instance, in the blade and the body of the axe itself. So yeah, that basically, there we go. Let's build the axe. Wow, tricky. Yeah, so there you go. That's the axe built. The axe I'm not going to have him carrying. He's going to be stuck to his side, which apparently is what these bits are for. Goes on there, something like that, I think. But we'll figure that out as we go. I do need to weather and wear the weapons as well. Wear the weapons. So we've got the axe completed. The rest of it isn't quite so easy. I don't know how to do the rest of it. Oh, actually no. That's used for the axe. That's a little clip piece. So the little clip piece actually goes into his armour hole, like that, and then the axe will clip over the top of that, like that. So there we go. He's armed now. He's not quite so naked. Right, the rest of the weapons, say, are a little bit more complicated. There's two other weapons. There's the Zaku machine gun and the Zaku bazooka. Right, so the machine gun is the back, the two sides of the gun. That's for the machine gun. The little clips, you have one on each, one for the machine gun, one for the thing. The handles, again, you have one for each, and they matter which way round. That one is for the bazooka, this one is for the gun. You've got the barrel and the front of the barrel and the magazine thing. The other bits there, I think, are all for that. Two other little bits. We've got two clear pieces. Again, one for each, basically. So I think that's the big one on there and the little one on here. But we'll figure that out as we go. The building of the gun is pretty easy. You've got the butt goes into the back, and the other side of that, get it the right way around, goes onto that. There we go, that's squeezed together. Then we have the other sort of hand grip type thing, clips on the front, and that obviously can be bent round to, trying to think which way around it'd have to go. It'd have to go that way so you can hold it from the front, I think. We'll figure that out. And then, no, that piece is part of the gun. So you've got the barrel itself goes on there, and that goes onto the front of the barrel. They are keyed in, they've got a flat side, so you need to get them the right way around. You can actually feel when it's locating the right way. So that's that bit, but that doesn't go on there yet. I did that when I was putting it together as a test fit. I forgot all about that, which has the little piece in there. Yeah, but that has a sticker on it. No, not this one. This is just the glass, sort of the optics on there, and that goes on there first. Then the barrel goes on, and then the magazine goes together, again making sure it's keyed the right way, and that goes on there, pointing forwards. That would have been easier to do before we put the sight on. So there we have a Zaku machine gun. So it needs weathering, so I'm not going to put it together yet. Oh, one last bit, I missed the last bit on here. The little hook piece goes over there, and that is what you use if you want to pin it to his hand. I think if you want it on his hand, that actually goes into a bit of the hand to locate it in place better. So there we have Zaku machine gun. Let's do the bazooka. It's basically the same. We've got the big tube with the two bits either side. Does it matter which way up? No, that's symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way up that goes. That goes on one side like that. The other half of the tube goes over the other side like that. Then we have again the optics and the glass bit. Oh, if I can not throw it around, that would be lovely. It goes into there, just sits in there, and that goes which way round? That way round with the glass at the front. Yeah, because that one's got the glass at the front. Actually, it goes glass at the back because that only keys in there one way. That's interesting. No, I'm holding this upside down. There we go. There we go. So that's that way around. It doesn't go on there, it goes on the top bit. See, this is me being an idiot. I think you can, no, you can't move it around. So the glass does go at the back. See, fool. Pay attention. Glass goes at the front, obviously. That's where that handly bit goes. Onto that bit. And again, clip onto the same side, yeah. Little clip piece goes on there, and we've got the back of the rocket engine on the back. So there we go. We have the three weapons. So to plan out what's going to happen, obviously I'm going to be using them all. The rocket launcher has its own little shelf at the back here. This piece folds down, and apparently the rocket launcher goes on that somehow. It just hooks on. You fold bits in and down, and the sight folds down, and that. Oh yeah, there is actually one slot on there and a slot on there. So that goes on there like that. I have to rearrange the axe so it's not in the way. But there he is with that. I'll be tidying the legs up, but I do want his foot one leg higher. The Zaku machine gun is going in his hand. Move that out of the way for now. The hand actually comes apart. The fingers snap off like that. So you've actually got the, I'll take that off for now. And that then As we say, that folds out, doesn't it? Yeah. The inner piece there folds out. Just like that. And that peg goes into the inside of the hand to make sure he can't drop it. Yeah. Basically that goes on there, and then the other bit of the hand clips on the front again, but I say for weathering I'm going to be taking the weapons back off again. So he's going to have one foot raised up on a mound of whatever. That's going to be good to go. I think that one's going to be around, perhaps supporting the bottom of the gun in that sort of pose. There we go, ready for action, ready to go. The axe on his belt sort of side, and the bazooka the right way round, sitting on his back. I will be gluing the bazooka in place, I think, to stop that moving around. But there we have a Zaku built and armed, ready to go. Cool, I like that. So now I've got to mostly, well not mostly, but partially take it apart. We've got hundreds and hundreds apparently of stickers to put onto it. There aren't actually that many in the pack. There's a page of them, which I'll get out now. There we go. Now stickers are normally not the best choice. Water slide decals are always better, but they don't give you any of them. And some of these stickers are nice and shiny. So I'm going to see what I can do with the stickers, and then obviously I'm going to be weathering over the top anyway, so it should make it look quite nice, or at least not as bad as it looks now. So weapons are going to come back off. I'm going to start putting some stickers on. The stickers for these, basically, let's start with one where I can see. We've got number 47 is a little white strip that goes just across on there. So we'll see what we've got. 47, we've got two 47s. So I'm assuming that's one either side. But I'll do one just this side just to give you an idea of what the sticker is going to look like once they're in place. So just going by eye, because there's no indication of exactly where it needs to go. That's going to go on there, something like that. Try and get it straight, and in the same place as the picture shows it. Getting it straight is the tricky bit. There we go. Then when that's down, for a sticker, that's not too bad at all. You can't really see any outline bits for it, so I'm confident that this is actually going to be fine. Let's just see about 17. The smaller ones are the ones that are going to look a bit worse for wear, I think. So little 17 goes on the end of that sight. Must be just above the flat bit of that sight, just in there. A little warning label. So yeah, that's not bad at all actually. The outsides of it are very transparent. So that I'm quite happy with. That's come out quite well. So yeah, I was worried about the stickers, but I'm less worried now. I'm going to get a few more of these on, basically cover the whole thing in stickers and decals, and then we'll come back and I'll show you some weathering. And onto the weathering proper. I've taken the leg off to be able to get to it, obviously, and get around it and do what we need to do. You're right, to start with, we're doing some paint chipping. Now for this, I'm going to be using a couple of different colours. I'm using the light grey for the metallic bits, and some sort of rusty red for the other painted bits. So what we're going to do is just get a little bit of that out on a palette, and using a very fine brush, just getting a little bit on the tip, and then basically just painting in paint chips and things on the top of the piece itself. Now pretty much this is going to be around the edges, because that's where things get chipped, and I'm just doing sort of random dots and lines and things around, different amounts of it, just where paint would have been knocked and chipped as it goes on. Now what also looks good on this is actually lines, as if he's sort of knocked and scuffed against something. So a couple of lines, and again random sort of patches around. Being this is obviously a foot, it's going to be knocking into things, and bits are going to get chipped around, especially obviously from the bottom coming upwards. So I'm doing that, so just around bits of it, especially as say corners where obviously things would get scuffed and knocked. Just thinking about how things wear and where wear happens. So especially corners and edges, high spots basically. So where it's a corner there, things are going to get scuffed around and knocked, and it's going to randomly pick up a lot of impact damage, especially at the front of the toe. Obviously not so much around the back. So I'm just putting in some bits here and there. You can already see that side just looks older. So doing that, same with the other colour. Let me just get some of that out to start on a patch of that to show you what's what. Let me just rinse off that brush rather than, don't need to worry about cleaning it absolutely, because it's all about muck and dirt and messing around. So with the red browny colour, basically doing exactly the same, picking a panel and adding around the edges, so especially where corners and things appear, things like that screw hole at the top there. So corners more especially. And again just adding a couple of sort of scrapes across the high points where it would have got knocked and chipped, and I'm repeating myself, I'm aware, but that's all I can really say. So bits like that across all of the panels, more especially around the edges, but it will just add a layer of worn and use. So I'll get all that done on the rest of the kit, and then I'll go on to the next stage. So see you in a moment. That's the first stage done. It's dried, so I'm happy with how that's going. Now the next bit is much the same. I'm using the same paint, so I'm still using the sort of rusty primer, but I'm applying it with a sponge. Now for this you need what I've got here, a bit of tissue and a bigger blob of paint. So what I'm doing is basically dabbing the tissue in the paint, getting rid of most of the paint from the tissue, from the sponge on the tissue, so it's almost all gone. And then using that, I'm just going to start on the one piece to apply smaller, almost invisible specks, which you can just about see on bits of it. Again, not everywhere, just sort of focusing on a few edges, picking up a bit more paint, getting rid of most of it. I don't like doing this bit, it feels like so wasteful. If only there was a way of just picking up a little bit of paint, but I haven't found one yet. So it creates a different effect to using a paintbrush. If I can put some on a bigger light green area, there you go. You can see it's just very minuscule little dots, which at this scale would still be quite big. But it just gives a better, it's mixing it up a little bit. I'm trying not to go onto the grey bit, because that's obviously the light grey on there rather than this colour. But as I say, not over the top, not everywhere, and most of it is really sort of not even doing very much, because there's so little paint on the sponge itself, but it just adds a little bit of variation. Now, I don't know exactly what these Zaku beads are meant to be in the overarching story, so I haven't actually been weathering them. I don't know. I'm going to have to have a look and read up and see what they are, if they need weathering, or I'm happy to leave them as if they've been replaced, or, you know, I'll have a look around for some sources and see if I can find any information on it. I would say let me know in the comments, but it's going to be too late then. So I'm just going to go ahead and basically cover lots of bits with some light speckling, just to break it up a bit in a few areas and give a bit more randomality to everything. So I'll get all that done and then come back and see the next stage. So I'll see you momentarily. Okay, all of the extra paint chipping and the little bits with the brush are all done. So next up, I'm going to be using some streaking. I've got some ammo by MiG, Starship streaking. I know it's not a Starship, but it's what I've got, and it works quite well. It's basically a very, very thinned Starship filth, which works well. Although this isn't really going to be rusty, because I don't know that Gundams actually rust. It's going to have accumulated grime and grease and muck. So what I'm using is a very fine brush, and not a lot of this. Basically, I'm putting in some very fine edges and streaking just in a couple of places. So a little bit of streaking there, a little bit across there maybe, and a little bit coming down there, especially under things that would accumulate grime and muck. So I'm going for there, so across the panels here, just putting in a little bit of streak coming down. So not much, and it's more of, again, it's a subtle sort of thing. So actually probably a bit more under there, as that's sort of a place that things are going to accumulate. Sort of around here, what we got just from the edge here, I think maybe a little bit there. But this isn't the end of the job. Once I've done this, I'm actually going to get rid of most of this as well. So the trick is remembering where I put it. Actually, under that's going to be quite a big blob of the stuff, because that's quite a messy area, I would expect. So I'm actually going to get quite a bit coming down off there, and as such down off there as well. And in the back of the leg, it will get filthy, so it needs to add some filth. And again, those, same at the top there, but you're not going to be able to see very much of that anyway. And I'm going to add some in to the joint there, just to dirty that up a little bit around the edges there somewhat. Now, after I've done this bit, I'll be leaving it for a couple of minutes. So basically, by the time I've done one leg, it'll be time to come back and start getting rid of it from that leg. Hopefully in a sort of similar order to the one that I've been putting it on in. So what we'll do, I'll clean off that brush, Not worried about cleaning it a great deal because I'll be using it again to do the rest of the body as well. Let me put the lid back on there. Basically just killing time now for a minute or two. Then I'm going to use a slightly thicker brush, but not by much. And I've got some odorless thinner. This is actually AK odorless thinner. And I'm going to be getting some of that on the brush. I've just tipped some out onto a dish here. And where I've added these streaks, I'm going to go over and sort of spread them around a bit, move them and get rid of much of it. But I'm trying to do this upright, but I can't do it completely upright because then you won't see it. It will be, say, moving some of it, but just sort of softening the edges and making it all a little bit more sort of runny. So I'm just getting the bits that I've done, softening it all down, making it a little bit more liquid, a little bit more, let's say, feathering the edges basically. So where there's a big blob, you can get in there a bit deeper. Just make it look more like it belongs. And this, as well as, let's say, making this bit look better, will actually do wonders with the rest of the chipping underneath. It's actually going to help blend all that in a little bit. So I've not got this everywhere. Just trying to remember and trying to see where I've got it done, where I've already done it, and where I need to perhaps go over and give it another coat in a bit, a little bit more. There's a big bit across there, so I'm going to bring that down quite a long way. Being as this is quite thin, it will go into panel lines and things on its own without me having to worry about that too much. So that's this stage. As ever, I'm not going to film all of this. I'm going to get this done on this leg and then go on and do the rest of it off camera. And then we're progressing to the next stage. Hopefully you're seeing it, I say, coming together a little bit more unified rather than just being lots of little individual bits. Still got another sort of coat of washing to do on all of it, so I'll finish off the rest of it and see you after that. Alright, next up on the weathering, I'm adding some oil stains. So this is a little bit different because I'm not going to be painting this on, I'm going to be splattering it on. So, best way of doing this I found is to get a brush that's old and knackered but quite big. What I'm actually going to do is just drop some paint onto the brush itself, and then using a cocktail stick I'm going to show you it not working. I need more paint on it than that. By getting that paint on, say quite a lot, you can actually splatter it. Now you can just about see some darkening there as little blobs splash off. Takes a bit of practice to get it the right way and to be able to aim it a little bit. And again, the more you do, the darker it gets. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm only going to do this on the legs because I don't want it to be everywhere. I'm just sort of aiming in some areas where it's more likely it would have accumulated. But this gives nice little droplets and splatter without it being too much, and gives a different random effect. I say, however much you feel the need to do, the more you do it, the bigger blobs you end up getting. So I'm just working my way around the leg, adding more paint as needed. A lot of the paint is obviously getting sucked up into the brush itself, so the brush will need a good cleaning afterwards, or possibly a good throwing away. But that's just about, I'll get the other side there, so I'll turn that round. Not really visible on camera and not that visible to the eye, but it adds an extra layer of detail to it. Hopefully that tissue isn't affecting the white balance far too much, but it just adds a little extra messing around. So I'm going to do that to the other leg as well, and then I'm going to do much the same with some petrol spills, but not quite so much. So see you in a moment. And one of the last stages of weathering on this is some pigments. I've got some metal slag, which is a lovely dirty pigment. Now I'm doing this on some tissue because you might be able to recover some of the lost bits, and I'm also using a really old knackered brush because it's going to be not much good after this. Now this, if you don't use pigments, they're basically a powder. You can't really see it too well in there, but so they're just a loose powder, very fine grained, which you can pretty much just slap into grooves and almost anywhere, and then either knock off or blow off the excess. Now this I'm putting into places that's going to be getting wear and sort of really muck and accumulated grime. Not so much on the flat panels because they wouldn't really pick it up, but in the grooves, and especially, let's say, the joints and bits around there. Difficult to show on camera because it's such a fine powder, but basically just getting it in and then getting rid of it. Not much, but some of it will stay in place. Now I tend to use an airbrush just to lightly get rid of excess. Not you know, not really blowing at it, but I want to get some in and around these thruster vents, and making sure I get some down the bottom of that and into the insides of joints where it will really stick and make it look lovely and dirty. So there we go, that's pretty much the weathering finished on this. A couple of bits to touch up here and there, but there is a nice dirty, horrible, filthy leg. Going to do the rest of it. Obviously the legs are getting the worst of it because they're going to be down and dirty in the floor and everything, and make sure I get some of this into the grooves there. Obviously I'm not really worrying too much about the underside of the foot because that's going to be on the floor, you're not going to see that, but getting the rest of it done and filled in. When I give it a varnish coat, that will hold all this in place anyway, but that's that. I'll get the rest of it done. And there we have basically the completed kit. I can't stand him up because you won't see him because you're looking from the top, not the side. But that's him in the pose that he's going to be in. All his weapons in place except for the bazooka, which is quite unwieldy. I'll put that on later. And yeah, I'm happy with him. The effects of impact damage and scarring and wear come out quite well. I probably went a bit too heavy with the initial chipping. Should have focused more on the edge, not so much on the middles, but as a learning experience it's quite good and it looks quite good. So next up we're going to be doing the sort of base for him to stand on. What I've done is got just some polystyrene, some foam, stuck a bit lump on for giving him his foot, cut little edges and made it sort of rough shape. He's going to stand on there basically like that, just sort of ready to go, and I need to cover this in mud. So I've got from eModels the damp soils mud and earth set, which is 3 bottles, one of thick soil, one of moist ground, and one of turned dirt. I've also got the AK Splatter Effects wet mud, Now I had a play around with these and put them on another bit of foam. So basically we've got the wet mud is a very dark, it's almost dry. This most of it's dry. The what is it? The moist ground is actually, funnily enough, still moist, even after nearly a day. But it has gone on thicker than the others. So that's that one. This is the splatter effects, the splashes, sorry, which is a very thin paint, which is pretty much what I thought the splatter effects was going to be, but that's quite a bit thicker. As I've already said about the moist ground, and the turned dirt is just a very nice sort of dried mud colour. So what I'm going to do is, I did actually paint this straight onto another piece of foam without any priming or anything, and just slapped it on, as Ted says, and it's come out quite well. But this has definitely given the best coverage, so I think I'm going to give it all a coating of the turned dirt, no, sorry, the thick soil. Just going to cover it all in thick soil, and then mostly use the moist ground, I think, but the splashes will be coming up the legs of the Zaku, and the wet mud, I might have a couple of sort of pools of that sort of in there as well, and again covering his legs a little bit. So this has just been stuck together with white glue, PVA glue, and it's good to go. I'm not going to bother putting it on a base or anything. It's quite sturdy like that. It's going to be standing on top of it. It's not very big, and that's somewhat flexible. It's not going to be bent or anything. So I'm going to get this covered in thick soil. So I'm just going to put down some paper because I've got to go around the edges as well. I'm just going to use a big old brush. Give this a bit of a shake up, and then I'm just going to once again slap it on. It doesn't matter about being neat or tidy about any of this. I might have to come back in and do stuff with some of the edges, but I think this is going to work out the bottle, as it were. We'll come back and see if it does later, but I'm just going to get this painted on now, and then we'll see how it looks in a bit. So I'll stop filming now, because you don't need to be watching me paint a big piece of polystyrene. I'll see you soon. Well, it dried, but I didn't like it, and it didn't cover up the dodgy imperfections in the foam as I hoped it would. It didn't look good enough to be mud. So I'm going with a thicker, aka wet mud, which is, as you can see, a lot thicker, and I'm not painting it on because that will really ruin paintbrushes. I'm slathering it on with a stick, and that's giving a much thicker level of mud, more of a sort of coating rather than just a painting. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a nicer finish. The bit that I did a little while to test it has come out a lot nicer, so I'm going to have to touch it up a couple of bits in a couple of areas. It's going to make the diorama a bit darker than I was hoping for, although I can obviously paint it. I'm thinking I might not. The more I'm looking at it, I think the contrast of the very dark sort of mud here against the lighter, because the Zaku itself is very green and light, and I think that's going to come out quite well. So we'll see. I'll get this covered in mud, and then we'll see how it looks once it's dry. So I'll see you in a bit. Right, it's all covered in wet mud. I've also added some moist ground just here. I'm going to do another bit. What I've done, where I've got some sort of divots and puddles, I'm adding the moist ground because I figure that's where it would sort of gather. So basically what I'm doing is getting an old paintbrush and painting in some moist ground in the middle, leaving a sort of big pool of it, as it were, and then basically just spreading it around. So I'm trying to get it like there's a puddle of mud in the middle there, and then almost dry brushing the edges. I thought it would, not look too bad as it is, but the first one I did, it did sort of just look, well, not like that. It didn't really look right, so I do need to blend it very slightly. I'm doing that by just sort of pulling it from the middle towards the edges a little bit, and then pulling the edges a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further until there's virtually no paint being transferred, but it doesn't look like a blob in the middle of nowhere. You may have noticed I've also glued the Zaku in place. I've actually not glued it, I've just used the wet mud to hold it in place. It seems to be okay, but we'll see how it goes once it's all dry. I've also put a little man and the pilot that came with the kit. I've painted him up as I would imagine a Zaku pilot would look. I need to get a finer brush to get in around him there. But yeah, this is just a quick update with bits going forward. I'll finish off putting some, I say, muddy puddles around and blending it so it doesn't look so bad. And then next up will be some splatter effects with the turned dirt splashes, that one there, which have to go onto the legs and sort of the area around as well. So a few more muddy puddles and then some splashes going on when it's all dried. So I'll see you in a moment. Okay, that's all the muddy puddles and stuff done, it's all dried. I'm going to do the last little bit with some splashes of the turned dirt. So I'm doing the same splatter technique as I tried with the oil and grease on the Zaku itself, but obviously this is going to come out and show much worse. So I'm going to try not on the kit first to try and make sure it's going to work as I think it's going to work. So yeah, that splattering quite nicely there. I did wipe off most of this. I'm going to try it without any wiping, just going to drain off the excess and see. Yeah, that gives a nice splatter effect, so I don't need to worry about wiping it down. So what I'm going to do is get this basically everywhere. I'm going to be covering the ground in some splashes, but especially up his legs. So basically just getting some splatters up, heavy at the bottom, getting lighter as he gets up to the top. And pretty much not much above the waist. Well, I might just get a few here and there. And obviously making sure I get some on the ground as well, because it will just add to the overall show of everything being a bit muddy. Get some of the puddles and big splashes as well. So I'm going to get the rest of this covered, come back and show you what's what pretty much when it's done. I'm going to touch up a couple of other bits with the mud as well on the Zaku himself, getting some in the folds and his creases. So I'll be back shortly with the finished kit. And there we go, him completed. All in all, a really enjoyable build. I mean, the Bandai kits are always lovely to build. There's not any problems with fit or anything like that at all. It's gone together lovely. The painting, again, no problems with it. The mecha colour paints are lovely. They're thin enough to airbrush, but the coverage they give is exceptional. No trouble at all with that. And the big mud soils pack, again, gave exactly the effect I was after. Doesn't come out quite as well in the picture and video as it does in person, but if you're ever up at eModels, have a look. It'll be in the cabinet at some point. Yeah, I've enjoyed every minute of the build. It's been great. No issues at all. I hope you've enjoyed the build and followed along, and as I say, got the itch to start one of your own. If you have, then obviously they're available at emodels.co.uk. Go and pick one up and have fun building it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for my next build.